Hey guys, so right now I'm going to be making the second ministry progress summary update here. And so it's been about a month here since the ministry launched, and I'm going to be going over some of the things that I've got done in this last 2-week cycle here. Now, first off, I'm really hoping that the webcam quality here is going to be better than the last couple videos that I've recorded. I spent some time fiddling around with GoPro settings. I am recording inside right now. It's pretty late at night. Like past 10 o'clock, so it's pitch black, and I do have blackout curtains up in the room that I'm recording in now, but I fiddled around with the color profiles and the ISO settings and things on the GoPro, so I'm hoping that this comes out clearer. Now, the other thing that I did was I increased the recording resolution for the screen capture software, so I am recording at 4K now, which means that hopefully the picture will be a lot clearer than it has been. So I just noticed some issues with the videos that I had made pretty recently here, like the second shorter introduction video that I'll go over here in just a little bit, so like the shorter version of the ministry intro, and a couple others. I just noticed that the footage wasn't that great, and I mean there were several reasons for that, and I'm going to be trying to hopefully fix that here. So I'll stop rambling about that. I'll get right into the slides to go over here for all the things I went over, and so we'll pick up with that in just a sec. Alright, so here we are with the slides, and this is going to be the ministry progress summary here through September 25th, 2022. And so as you can see with the title here, big categories that we did, I made the Bible Basics 6a study page on the website, so I got the first video for that organized so that that web page could be created as the landing page for that study, and I'll be filling out the other studies over time here. I made a bunch of meta videos on the channel, so things describing content and structure for the playlist, and then the shorter introduction video that I mentioned just a sec ago. And then I also planned out a bunch of the future work. So here's the summary. That's going to be up on the web page as well. And I'm not really going to go through the outline. I'm just going to go jump right in here. So one of the first things I did this last cycle was I added transcripts to the web pages for several of the recent videos that I'd worked on. And so transcripts for me are pretty easy. I have a spreadsheet program that I copy paste the automatically generated YouTube transcripts into, and it spits out everything with the hyperlinks made, but I just had to do this, and this is something that I'll have to kind of perpetually keep up with over time. Now, after that, I was trying to decide what I was going to do next, and so I started thinking about all of the things that I still had on my to-do list here. And in so doing, started getting a little bit depressed because there's still rather a lot of things that I want to get done before I'll consider myself truly ready. So it's not so much that I have, things that I must do, as there's just quite a few things in my backlog of tasks that just aren't entirely fun. So if it were just a lot, that'd be one thing, but it's kind of a lot of things, and the things that I have to do aren't terribly pleasant. So some things are kind of boring, tedious, busy work. So for example, formatting all the already existing content appropriately, writing more documentation for features I add, things like that. Others are more difficult, time-consuming, and just unpleasant generally, and this is largely due to a bunch of unknowns in how I'm going to implement things and the great complexity of the overall system. So I'm thinking here mostly specifically of modifying the code base for the preprocessor application I've written in Python to support the new page type that I want to do, and it's going to involve a good bit of refactoring to like the main program loop, and I'm going to have to write some other regular expressions to do the parsing that I want. And it's just gonna, I've done this sort of thing a couple times before in making this application, and I just know it's going to be bad, and so there's been a bit of procrastination there, but this is something else that isn't terribly fun. It's just another necessary task that I have to get through. And then of course, there's still a lot of setup that I need to do to be able to do all of the video related things I'd like to do in the future. So this is kind of setting up the videos for how I wish to do them in the long term. And so some of those things are like using a teleprompter with full scripts for every video. And so I am planning on making the scripts with voice recognition software, hoping to get input speeds kind of above 200, 225 words per minute. So that this will be actually possible time-wise for me to actually fully script all the videos, and then either use a whiteboard in the background or drawing on my screen with my tablet. I haven't quite decided, although I think I'm leaning towards like the tablet approach, just kind of for a little bit more interactivity when I'm going through things, and other things like this. So there's several to-dos on the list relating to improving some of the way that I generate video content, and so there's some research and setup that I'll have to do with all of those things as well. And again, it's not that any of these things are inherently so terrible, as they're just not very fun tasks. They're not like intellectually stimulating or things that I can kind of spend time researching and talking to others about doctrinally and things like that. So there's just kind of a lot of busy work tasks here, and unpleasant busy work at that. So in this process here, I went on a walk with my roommate. We kind of talked about some of these things that I need to get done now that I've launched my ministry and stuff. But there's just a lot that I need to do before I'll feel like I've reached the place where I truly want to be, and that's just a bit discouraging. You know, it has been a long process here. Many years I've been working on things, but you know, to kind of launch and then still have all of this stuff on my plate, I mean, that's just a little bit rough. So talking through it with someone else who's kind of in the process of setting up ministry stuff, someone who really understands, you know, it helps a lot. Just be able to, I don't know, just talk about all of the things that I'm facing, and you know, talking it out kind of helps you figure out what things you need to prioritize as well. So, you know, good conversation. It's always good to have close friends to bounce things off of so they can give you some perspective. And so this was kind of the first step here, considering all of the work that I have to do, kind of trying to make a list in my head of here's all the tasks, here's what is critical for me to be focusing on next. And then so after considering all the work, the next thing was coming up with a detailed plan of attack to work on all of these things. So given that I decided that the best way to tackle the large pile of work was with a detailed plan, I set out to make exactly that. I ended up settling on a plan that has 3 phases. After each phase, at which point some sort of milestone will be reached, a certain set of things will be able to be done that could not be done before. We'll get to the 3 phases in a sec, but first some other general notes on things I decided. I made the call to put off fully scripted videos, the teleprompter and the whiteboard type things. That is, the completely ideal video generation setup, at least as things seem to me, as long as I need to, kind of until these things are truly ready. But the change is, I'm going to keep going with the SR4 series in the meantime. And so that kind of means making the quote-unquote less optimal videos without the scripts and the teleprompter and the whiteboard demonstrations, kind of even though I hadn't intended to make any videos at all until I got the new setup completely operational. And so this is kind of a change. I am kind of changing my mind here, because even as recently as a week ago, I was kind of thinking that I wouldn't make any videos until I had kind of completely smoothed out that process and had everything set up how I wanted. But as I said, kind of changed my mind, and the basic idea is just that I don't want to let the perfect get in the way of the good. And I very much wish to do some actual ministry production alongside all the tedious busy work tasks I still need to finish here. Because if I just do the latter, like just the busy work stuff, everything is kind of too painful and I'll start burning out just because I'm not excited and enthusiastic about any of the work. It's just kind of something I have to grit my teeth and get through. And so I feel like mixing in some actual ministry content, which is much more enjoyable for me because I get to feel like I'm creating things and I'm providing useful content and things like that. It's just much easier for me to get myself to do that. So I'm going to try to kind of mix in the tedious, boring, busy work over time rather than front-loading all of it. And I hope that will actually help kind of make things easier to get through so that I don't keep procrastinating on things or just burn out from trying to do too much all at once. So now as to the actual phases in this plan, we'll go through each one of the phases in turn here. So phase 1 is basically polishing the basic content related to the initial launch. The tasks for completing phase 1, there's only 2 of them here. So the first one is kind of doing all the things for the first focused Bible Basics 6a video so that I could get the Bible Basics 6a study page kind of up on the website and started on, like having each of the lessons displayed. And so over time, I'll be filling in the rest of these lessons, but I wanted to get at least one up because that way I could have the study visible on the website, whereas it wasn't before. And then the other task here was kind of making some additional meta-related videos on the YouTube channel. And this is kind of just to get the content in a more polished state overall. So I had videos discussing playlist structure, and there's 4 playlists for this. So there's the more focused Bible Basics 6a, the full Bible Basics 6a that has like all 90 videos, the SR4 series without discussion videos, and the SR4 series with discussion videos. So I made a very short intro video for each one of those playlists describing the playlist structure. And then I also made content introductions for the 2 Bible Basics 6a series. So videos going over what content is contained in those playlists. And then finally, I made a shorter version of the ministry intro video, like I mentioned at the beginning of this video here, because the initial intro video ended up more than 45 minutes long, and that's just a little bit too long, I think, for it to be the banner video on the channel. So I made a much shorter one that goes over much the same information, but I tried to be really, really concise and only talk about the very pertinent things in a brief manner, and that got the length down to closer to 18 minutes, which is a lot better. Now, as to what I can kind of do after I finished phase one, I can be a bit more vocal about sharing the ministry, even more than I have been. Of course, I've shared it with friends and family and people I thought might be interested on the mailing list, but my mentor, who runs a ministry website of his own, he can kind of link it in the weekly email posting on his site. He'd offered to do that, but I kind of had identified these things, several days after I'd launched, more like a week and a half or something. I was just thinking about how could I make things better, and I kind of wanted to get these things done before further trying to increase the exposure of the ministry. If more people are going to see it anyway, I might as well make it better before more people see it, if that makes any sense. And so I kind of wanted to do this extra bit of polishing, get some more of the explanatory videos up there on the YouTube channel to kind of explain how the playlists are laid out and what content they contain, just because that's useful. And so having those things done first, I think, would make it kind of easier to understand when it's shared with people in a wider sense. And so I did actually finish all of the phase one tasks this cycle, and so we'll go over them once I finish going over the phases in the plan here. But this was the first phase of my three-phase plan for tackling all the work I have kind of staring me down here. So this was phase one. Now as to phase two is kind of supporting discussion pages, so that's the pages and then the corresponding videos in the YouTube playlists, and then organizing all of the already existing SR4 content from the SR4 series I have already up on the YouTube channel that has about 20, I think it's 21 videos in that series already. And so we'll go over exactly what those tasks are in a little bit more detail here. So the hardest thing, probably by far, is going to be fully coding the support for the discussion pages in the preprocessor application. So the application itself is probably a couple thousand lines of code at this point, and may sound like a lot. It's not that bad, but it's just I have to go modify some logic here and keep track of additional state so that I can pass things up from different page types, and it just gets kind of complicated pretty quick. And I just know from, like I said, past experience, having made some modifications to this application a couple times in the past, that this is just going to take me a while, and it's going to be kind of tricky, and I'm going to have to sit there and debug it for a while to make it work properly. And so I am just not really looking forward to this, because I know it's going to be kind of a long, arduous process to get it to work how I want it to. And then after I've set up the code base to do what I wanted, I have to explain exactly what it's doing and what these pages are and how people can make use of them. And so that means I need to write some documentation on the content organization page, which is one of the main documentation pages on the website. And writing documentation, it's very useful. It's necessary for people to be able to understand what things are supposed to do on the site. It's just, again, not very interesting. And so it's something that I have to kind of grit my teeth and make myself do, because I don't inherently want to do it very much. And then also on the busy work front here, I have to catch up on completely polishing all the content from the already existing SR4 videos kind of before I make new ones. And so at the same time that I'm going through and adding the timestamps and subject tagging everything so that the sections will show up in the subject index and things like that, I'm actually going to go through and review the material at the same time, because it's been a few months since I've last posted videos in this series, and if I go and review it at this point in time, I'll kind of be able to pick back up more seamlessly when I'm resuming the new content generation for this series. So again, after I have reviewed all of this, I'll be able to kind of pick back up in the series way more seamlessly than I would if it has just been months since I'd last seen this stuff. All right, so after I do those tasks, the things that I can kind of do after phase two is completed, there's 3 of them. So most obviously, I can start making new ministry content, and that will be more videos in this SR4 series that I've already started. And so once I've gone back and gotten all of the things done for the previous videos that are already there, I'll be able to start adding new content myself, and that way, I'll be able to balance all of the kind of tedious, busy work I have to do with generating new ministry content, which is something I find much more engaging, something that is not as hard for me to motivate myself to do. And so that way, getting that mix, I think it will be much more sustainable in the long term. Now, this is another big important thing, at least in my mind here. Given that I'll finally be adding new content on a consistent schedule, I'll feel even more comfortable with additional ministry exposure, to the degree that I'll be ready to go start getting more involved in local church groups again. And this is something that I have thus far kind of been holding off on in large part because I wanted to completely have the ministry live first. I kind of wanted to get my priorities straight and make sure that I launched the ministry, kind of have all my ducks in a row there before I go sinking a lot of my time into other things, just to make sure that I'm prioritizing it, and also just so that I kind of have a sense of how much time it will take before I go commit myself to other things. But once I start making content again, I'll kind of be ready to go get more involved in local groups and stuff. And so that's another thing that can kind of be accomplished after I finish the phase 2 tasks here. And then finally, if there's sufficient interest after meeting some local folks, like people from the Bible studies I attend and stuff, if they're interested in maybe meeting in my house another day of the week to go over some of the things that we talk about in more depth, just in addition to whatever other meetings the church groups we have already have, well then the in-person Bible studies at the house might be started at any point after phase 2 is completed. So that is after I'm kind of regularly making new content again. Now, I'm not going to try to force this. It might take some time for it to happen, but I want it to be organic rather than something I kind of push super hard. So, I'm not going to try to drag people to my house to do these Bible studies, but just if people are interested and we can go that extra level. I never, in the past when I was leading Bible studies at university, never had too much trouble finding people who I wanted, this extra Bible study sort of thing that we do. And so I'm kind of interested in having things develop that way in a more organic sense here. But point being here, this is something that can kind of happen after I'm regularly making new content again, and I'm getting myself more involved in the local church groups around me. So even aside from ministry considerations here, I'm kind of really looking forward to having a social life again, just because I've been pretty head down, kind of with nose to the grindstone since I graduated college, which was coming on 3 years ago now. And that's just because I had so much work, so many tasks that I had to get done to get the ministry website and the YouTube channel launched, and things have kind of changed over the years as I've been planning out what content, format, organization, everything for my ministry is going to have. And so there's just like a lot of things I needed to get done here. Just so that I could focus on all of that and give that my full attention and my time, so that I wouldn't let it slip on the back burner and never get done, I really prioritized getting all of this stuff done first. And so that meant that I kind of sacrificed a lot of social interaction. I wasn't as involved in local stuff as I was in college, because I wanted to get all of this stuff done and make it my highest priority. So I've just kind of been a little bit isolated as I've gone through and kind of, as I said, kept my nose to the grindstone here to get all of these tasks done the last couple years. And so I really like to kind of get through phase 2 as soon as possible so that I can start getting involved once more in local groups, because it's something that I've done previously. Of course, even aside from kind of helping serve in those communities, you get something out of being together with other believers. So it's something I'm really looking forward to. I hope I can find communities that share enough beliefs with me that I'll be able to speak my mind freely and find people who are similarly excited about the things that I am. But just that social component of it is something that I'm also looking forward to. And this is one of the reasons why I'd really like to get through phase 2 as soon as possible. So get through these tasks that we've talked about up here, these 3 things. Even though I think this is going to be some of the worst of it, this is going to be kind of busy work, unpleasant sort of things. There's not a lot here that I really want to do terribly, but I'm going to try to grit my teeth and get down to it and finish all of this because I really want to get to the other side so that I can start getting more involved again with local believers. All right, finally there's phase 3 stuff. So that's kind of organizing all the already existing Bible Basics 6a content, setting up the fully optimized video creation workflow, and then catching up in some other areas so that I can more fully focus on ministry stuff without feeling like I'm falling behind everywhere else. So that's basically what these tasks are, the things that we just said. So the Bible Basics 6a content, there's even more videos in that series than the SR4 series, but the thing that makes this even trickier is that the videos in the BB6a content series don't really follow as strict a structure. So that is, they don't completely follow a set of slides as much as the videos that I made myself do, because there's more discussion involved in the Bible study group that we had, and therefore they're going to be much more painful and time-consuming to timestamp and organize effectively, just because they don't nearly so rigidly follow a format of an outline, which is what makes it really easy to timestamp stuff. So I know this is going to be even more unpleasant on that account. And then there's just like a bunch of stuff that I need to do to kind of get the video workflow set back up how I want it to be. So to kind of be able to quickly dictate the full scripts, I have to set up the voice recognition software completely, and then I need to experiment with the teleprompter, make sure I can generate good quality video content with that, and then figure out how I want to do demonstrations on the whiteboard or drawing on my tablet. And then so I have to get all of these things set up so that the workflow will kind of be configured how I want it to be in the long term. And then I also need to make some changes, I'm not going to go through this too much, but some changes to the preprocessor application to further improve the slides the videos are based on. So for example, not using the embedded Bible app windows in the slides just because they take up a lot of space, but just using the plain text instead, supporting like nested headers, so like H4 versus H3 in the outlines. So right now the outlines are all kind of like one level, but would like to support nesting. There's no reason why I can't, I just haven't implemented it yet. So some things there to basically get all of the slide generation and the video content generation workflow kind of exactly how I want it in the long term. And then I also have a bunch of stuff that I need to catch up on the other YouTube channels that I run. So I have almost a year's worth of kind of daily vlogs that I've recorded going over all of the tasks that I do every day to kind of motivate myself to be organized and formal about things, and kind of keep that spiritual fire lit beneath me for all of the duties and the obligations that I'm trying to bear up under. And then I also just have a bunch of videos that I'd like to make about topics that I've researched and kind of written up my thoughts on, and so those will go on my personal YouTube channel. But I have like 25 or 30 of those videos that I've just been putting on the back burner because I wanted to prioritize ministry stuff first. But I don't want to let these things go forever because I would like to kind of dig myself out of the hole a bit so that moving forward I can much more easily just kind of make these whenever my fancy kind of gets taken by something, rather than having like this big huge backlog of things that I need to catch up on. So there's kind of not as much exciting that I can do after I complete phase 3. But the big gist is that I'll just be able to focus much closer to 100% of my attention on the production of new content rather than having like other matters steal away my attention. So rather than being distracted by all these 50 other things I have to do, I'm hoping to really be able to crank up the production pace once I'm not pulled so many directions all at once. So once I can focus more 100% of my attention on ministry stuff, and producing new content, I'm really hoping that I'll be able to kind of flip that switch and go into production mode quite a bit more than I have been at present. All right, and so phase 3 is the last phase of my plan here. After phase 3, I'll be done with everything on my list and making all new video content with the workflow I've thought out and wish to use in the long term. And so after this, I hope at least, things will mostly just be a matter of which content I make first. So if I have a bunch of things that I want to record videos about, I'll just need to decide which thing I do first, but I'll always be making content, which again is not something I find nearly as burdensome and tedious as all of this other work that I'm having to do up front here to kind of get things launched the first time. And so I'm really hoping that will make it a lot easier for me to motivate myself and stay focused because, it's just easier if all I'm doing is the content production, because it's actually something I relatively enjoy. All right, so that was the 3-phase plan I came up with after being a little bit gloomy about all of the tasks that are still staring me down here. And I actually did finish everything in phase 1 in this 2-week cycle here. So both of the main categories of tasks in phase 1 I actually got done, so we'll go over those a little bit more in a sec here. So first off, I did all the things for the first Focus Bible Basics 6a video so that I could get the study webpage up on the website. And so that means that now the page is there. I'll add more lessons to it as we go in the future here. But kind of in the process of getting this first Bible Basics 6a video organized and formatted, I did a bunch of things. So first, I kind of built content for it. I copy-pasted the stuff off Ichthys, turned it into Markdown, formatted some of the quotes and stuff with special content sections and all the things like that to build slides, because for this video specifically, I'd actually just been teaching straight off the study and I didn't have the slides for it, so I built slides for it here. I added timestamps for the study, and again, this was trickier and more time-consuming since this one wasn't actually directly based off of slides. I subject tagged all the sections. This actually took a good bit because, there were a fair number of sections in the study and I wanted to make good subject tags for everything. Then I built out the video description and pushed everything live on YouTube and the site. So this is kind of publishing it all, making it go live on the internet. And so, there were some other things that went into this too, but this was kind of the basic gist. So getting all the things done for the first BB6A video so that that web page on the website is now kind of set up and ready for when I go ahead and start organizing more of the later lesson content. I think there's like 38 more videos after this one that I'll need to do the same thing for, but this was just getting the first one up so that at least the study shows up on the website. And then the other task that I did here, and this was what took a good long time, this cycle here, was creating the additional meta-related videos on the YouTube channel. So there were actually 7 separate videos that I made here. I made 2 videos for the Bible Basics 6a playlist on the channel going over the structure and what's different in the structure between the focused playlist and the full playlist for videos. So basically the focused playlist only contains videos from later on in the study, once I was a bit more organized about things and making slides for the content that we went over and stuff. And so those videos tend to be just more focused, a bit shorter, probably more useful for most people on balance just because we don't kind of go off on as many rabbit trails and get sidetracked in discussion as much. So they're just a little bit more focused on the study itself. Whereas the full series has like all 90 videos in the playlist and, like the first 50 or so where we were just recording the study as we had it. It might be good if you're interested in lots of discussion on all the material, but some of those videos are more than 2 hours long, which is kind of it's a pretty heavy lift, right? And then I also made videos explaining the structure of playlists on the channel that do and do not have discussion videos. So these videos I actually made for the SR4 playlist here specifically, but I'm probably just going to reuse these same videos across all the playlists that I do make discussion videos for, just because the concept will be the same across all of them. So I think I'll be reusing these quite a lot over the history of the channel here, but I made those explaining what the differences between playlists that do and don't have discussion videos are. So things that do have discussion videos give more depth, but they're just a little bit longer and less focused than the playlists that have just the lesson videos there. Because with just the lesson videos, you don't have as much perspective, you don't have as many backgrounds given to kind of help flesh out the content, but you do stay very focused and on topic with just the videos from the study itself. So that's kind of the difference there. So explaining the difference between those playlists as well. And then I made content introduction videos for both of the playlists for the Bible Basics 6a series as well. So both the focused one, which I just went over the videos that we had up in the playlist for like the last 30 some odd lessons that we had recorded that were part of the focus series. And then for the full one, I actually went through the entire outline of the parapatheology study on ichthys, kind of going section by section, just giving a brief summary of what the study is about. And so that's so people who come across that video, they're kind of wondering what is contained in the playlist that has these 90 videos on this study. Well, what's it about? Well, that's kind of what that video is for. And then finally, I made a shorter, more focused version of the general ministry introduction video. So this one was about 18 minutes long as opposed to the 45 minutes of the initial one. And so that is to be the new banner video on the channel. Now, of course, prior to making all these recordings, I had to draft content and make slides, at least for most of them. A couple of them, like the content introductions, I didn't really go off slides so much. I just did, a little bit of organization of an outline and then just did it spur of the moment. But most of these I had slides. I actually made a new content type called not displayed, which kind of, as you would assume, doesn't get displayed. I actually ignore it in version controls, so none of this will end up on the website. But this is just so that I can make these slides for me to have them, the same format as other things I do, even if I'm not pushing them up on the website. So I kind of had to organize the folders and stuff to make that work properly. And of course, after recording all the videos, I had to do all the post-processing for them, upload them to YouTube with appropriate thumbnails, put them in the appropriate order in the appropriate playlist. You get the idea, yada, 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 right? All of the organization stuff relating to the videos on YouTube. And then I'm going to ignore this paragraph mostly, but I basically actually had a lot of technical problems here because I was actually combining some videos here. I did several different takes, and then I was kind of sharing a section in the structure videos, kind of the section that explains the differences, for example, between the full Bible Basics 6a playlist and the focused one, and between the no discussion videos and discussion video playlists. I was kind of sharing the main section that describes what the differences are and then adding an intro and an outro for each. Well, when I started trying to concatenate videos, I was getting really weird behavior, and that's because the frame rates weren't matching. And so if you're interested, when you edit videos and stuff, usually best to have constant frame rate for your video, but the screen recording software I have has variable frame rate, so I had to figure out how to convert between the two. And also the audio channels weren't working because I recorded one part of a video with a specific mic configuration and a different part of the video with a different mic configuration, and it wasn't letting me just smush them together, and so I had to do some conversion there, and blah, 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 right? So technical stuff, I think I figured it all out. I understand everything better, so I don't think I'll get confused again and have to spend as much time researching all this to fix it, but that did eat up a good few hours there figuring out how to get all the videos made, even though in the past I've had no issues. Well, now because I was kind of smushing things together, some complexity came up in doing that. All right, so that was the second part of phase 1, and so those were both tasks in phase 1. I got all these videos made, I got the BB6A study made, so that's phase 1 completed now. And so I did send an email off to my mentor. He's going to share the ministry on his website, so I appreciate that. Gives me some extra exposure, but that's kind of like the initial polishing now, that the things that really jumped out at me when I was reviewing the initial launch content here, kind of a month out, seeing if there's anything I could make better for the initial stuff. And I think this is the polishing that I wanted to do up front. And so I'm happy with how things turned out here. Now I'm moving on to phase 2 stuff. So things that we still have left to go over here. This one I'm going to go over real quick. I did some kind of miscellaneous styling bug fixes and improvements. I made a CSS tweak to the slides template to make the highlight background color yellow rather than blue. So you can actually see I've been using that in this presentation to kind of highlight what text I'm going over at any given point in time. I think it looks a lot better. I fixed some alignment in the icons that are part of the subject index links in the subject index. So just made things more centered on the line. It was kind of just didn't look as good because they were a little bit off center. And then I kind of resolved a positioning issue with the table of contents. It wasn't kind of properly stuck to the top of the web page, but there was a gap of like 10 pixels or something, and it looked kind of weird. And so I just figured out how to make it stick to the top as well as the bottom so that it is the full height of the screen. Now, close to the end here, I also got the new computer this week. So the desktop computer that I'd ordered from kind of a custom builder, they put all of the CPU and the RAM and everything in, and I just had to boot it up and install Windows on it. Well, that desktop finally came here, and so I spent a good bit of time compiling a big list of applications I used to make sure I installed everything I wanted to on the new computer. I'm shifting into using a package manager called Chocolatey for anyone who's interested, kind of for as much as possible, and this should help maintainability in the future, because in the future I can just kind of export a script and then import all of the applications, and it will automatically download them for me rather than me having to go download things one by one. It's pretty cool, pretty efficient. Happy with how that turned out, but it took me a while to research all that. So this is like the first time I've set up a new computer in like 6 years or something, since I got my tablet middle of college, so it's been a long time. Now, of course, this computer is way more powerful than that one is too, but I mean, it's still running Windows, so most of the same applications I use, I'm going to be using on both. And so this entire process, I mean, I've gotten stuck on a few things. There's some quirks, the differences between Windows 10 and Windows 11 that have thrown me a little. Actually, mostly for the worse, which is kind of frustrating. There's some stuff that I haven't been able to figure out, or at least I had to do a bunch of researching to figure out how to do, which was kind of annoying. I have a few things to do still here, so some setup will still carry into the next cycle here, but I mostly got things set up. And in fact, I am making this video as we speak on the new computer. Things are mostly working, got all the software processing for video editing and stuff, and for generating stuff with Markdown. I got Python installed so that I can run the preprocessor and all of that set up on the new computer. Now it's a lot more powerful, to the tune, it's probably more than 4 times. It's probably like 6 times as much CPU throughput and 8 times the RAM. So I have 64 gigs of RAM on this computer. I was running into some memory problems, and when I'm running virtualization and probably the voice recognition as well eventually, and everything all at the same time, I want to make sure that I don't get memory locked, because it does slow things down a lot. So a very powerful computer here. I'm hoping it will help speed up all the content generation, just because there's a lot that goes into some of this, and so having a powerful computer should help a lot, and I'm pretty psyched about it. I'm happy with how it turned out for the most part. But this was something else that ate up a good bit of my time this 2-week cycle here. All right, so finally I'm going to talk about the upcoming work I have. Kind of as just mentioned, I finished all the phase 1 stuff already. We've talked about that sufficiently. Not going to go over that too much more here, but that's good because it means that it's at least one step out of the 3-phase plan that I've knocked out here. So my main focus in the next coming days here will be the task from phase 2. Now, I actually did order this more specifically. So the 3 tasks there were coding the support for the documentation pages, documenting not documentation pages, for the discussion pages, documenting the discussion pages, and then organizing all of the already existing content for SR4. And I'm actually going to do things in the order I just said there, rather than doing like the SR4 stuff first. That's because if I do the review of the SR4 content I've made at the very end of phase 2, right before I start back up content creation in that series, things will be maximally fresh in my head, and I can resume much more seamlessly than if I kind of like do it and then spend 2 or 3 weeks fiddling around with the coding stuff and then have to come back to it and try to remember where I am. So I'm going to kind of do the review of the SR4 material right before I start up production there again. That way it'll be way more seamless for me to kind of pick up and keep going where I left off. Because I left off probably more than a year ago now. And so I just want to make sure I know where I am in the study, what the next stuff I want to talk about is, and organize all that effectively so that there's, for people who come back and watch us in the future, there won't be like this big glaring gap between like week or lesson 10 and the 11th lesson, which is the one I'll pick up with, because I hadn't seen things in a while. But I'm going to try to make it as seamless as possible. So that's the plan for the work that I'm going to be doing in the future here. All right, well, this one got a bit long here too, but I hope this has been a useful explanation of all the things that I've gotten done here through September 25th. Then I'll pick up in next couple weeks, hopefully having made more progress on the coding side of things here with discussion pages, as well as organizing some of that SR4 content so that I can actually start generating new ministry content again. Again, that's something that I'm really hoping that I can get done, partially so that I can go get involved with local church stuff, but also so that I can balance the creation of new content, which is, again, something I have a much easier time kind of getting myself to do with all of the busy work, tedious tasks that I still have to do here in the initial setup phase. And so with that, I will talk to everyone again next time.